Dear Guruji, may He protect us both together. The sacred verses of Upanishads are like prayers. Please help me to understand this prayer. How can I stop my vritti to turn this prayer into mere words or one more theoretical concept? Jatinder, you have referred to one amongst the many Shanti part verses in the Upanishads. The Upanishads open with Shanti part verses. There are many of them. We have referred to one very common Shanti part. Many Upanishads open with this one. The teacher and the student, they together pray. And they say Om. Protect us together, may we learn together, may we meditate together, and may we not turn against each other. May we not be full of hatred for each other. The Guru and the Shishya are praying. May we not be full of resentment against each other. Yes, Satinder. Good that you have asked for this to be explained. It's a love-hate relationship between the teacher and the student. Ever been with a gym trainer? How many of you? Or with a sports coach? How does he feel when he makes you run one more lap after you think you are done? Yes, you think you're done for the day, and he says, one more lap of the stadium, please. How does it feel? You feel delighted and really grateful, do you? How do you feel? It's just that some good sense and a bit of fear of authority prevents you from explicitly rebelling at that point, right? It's a combination of the two. Some good sense and a little bit of fear of authority. So you tell yourself, what he is saying is for my own good, isn't it? Yes, of course. He's a dog. But let me follow him. Because I am not a dog. I know where my interest lies. So it's easy to see why the student is likely to hate the teacher. The teacher is not a supporter of the student. The teacher does not help in the furtherance of the student. To an extent, the teacher is like a corrector, after a point, the teacher is not even a corrector. He is straight away a destroyer. Right? In fact, very recently, I had mentioned or written that you aren't yet a student if you have not hated the teacher with all your might. No, I had gone beyond that. I had said you aren't yet a student if you haven't thought of murdering the teacher. You are a student only the day the thought of killing, eliminating the teacher comes to you. Then you qualify to be a student. Because if the teacher is really hitting the mark, then there would be an intense recoil from your side. If that recoil is not happening, it means either the teacher is missing the mark or you are shrewd enough to protect yourself. The real thing is not happening. The arrow is not hitting the jackpot. The center is not being penetrated. And when the center is penetrated, it is not always sweets and roses. When the center is penetrated, it hurts. It hurts badly. The ego has been delivered a crushing blow. What do you think? It will come with honey and perfumes? Huh? What is it going to do? You have just slapped somebody hard. It's not even a mere slap. It's a fatal blow. What do you expect? Retaliation. All kinds of retaliations. The retaliation is not always overtly violent. There can be subtle violence as well. The teacher is trying to bring about a fundamental change, and you keep resisting that change. This is subtle violence towards the teacher. That which could have been easily done is turned into a humongous task by you. And the result is that the teacher has to put in 20 times his energy than is needed. You are extracting 20 times the time, effort, and energy than should have been really needed. This is your subtle retaliation. You are saying, "Sir, you are destroying my world. I will destroy yours. You have turned my life into a hell. Do you think I will let you sleep in peace? I won't." And due to your innate morality, you cannot be, as I said, explicitly disrespectful or violent towards the teacher. So you try hidden, crooked, subtle ways. Whether your ways are gross or fine, the intention is the same. I will have my pound of flesh. You cannot so easily defeat me. Even if I have to go down, I will go down fighting. If you love me so much, come on, invest more energy on me. Give me more time. If you love me so much, then bear all my tantrums. Now we know that, right? Convince me that you love me enough for me to forsake all that I have. You're asking me to give everything up. Why should I give everything up for the sake of a non-lover? And now comes the real revenge. You have asked me to quit all my attachments. I will respond by getting attached to you. Ha! That's the mama revenge. The mother of all revenges. You asked me to not to be very body identified. I will look at you as a body. Checkmate. That kind of thing cannot come but from a point of retaliation and hatred. It's just that it is such a fine retaliation that it may even appear like love. And now you must ask, why is then the Guru reciting the same prayer? Why is the Guru praying for the same thing? Why is the Guru saying, may I not hate the student? You must understand this. For the Guru's words to be useful to the student, the words must come directly from Samadhi. Do you get this? The Guru's words or actions cannot help you or take you to Samadhi unless they are coming directly from the Guru's Samadhi. And Samadhi is sheer joy. Sheer joy. It is the greatest sleep, the greatest rest possible. You could even say it is the highest pleasure. It is not really a pleasure in the sense we know pleasure. But just to facilitate your comprehension, it is the highest pleasure. It is a superlative pleasure. That's why the scriptures sometimes use the word Anand and Sukh interchangeably. That's where the Guru is residing. Where? In his abode of Samadhi. Total relaxation, deep sleep. But being in a mortal form, he too is subject to prarabdha. After all, here, when we are talking of the Guru and Shishya, we are talking of the mortal Guru, aren't we? We are not talking of the Param Guru. We are not talking of the Nirakar truth itself. And the mortal Guru is bodily, is he not? Because he is bodily, so he too has to bear prarabdha. Hence he cannot enjoy his samadhi without having to pay for his prarabdha. He is told, you can stay in your samadhi, but you will have to continuously pay the price. The price is that you will have to help others reach where you are. And if you do not help others reach where you are, you too cannot stay where you are. Help others. So the fellow has to speak. He has to speak from his samadhi, but the speaking in itself can become an irritation. A load. Because after all, the speaking is necessitated because of prarabdha. But then remember that this narration is the next thing to nature. Narration is not nature. Narration of even God is not nature. Only God is nature. Narration of God comes second best, comes next to God. And why must the Guru settle for the second best thing when he is already enshrined, embedded in the best? So in a sense, the Guru has to step down, come down. He has to relinquish his inner depths for a while. Can the truth be told? Not really. But the Guru is entrusted to do the impossible. He is made responsible to tell the truth. Now the truth cannot be told. You see how difficult is the work of the Guru? Now from an easy place, when he is sleeping in the truth, he has been made to do an utterly difficult task. And what is that difficult task? Now come and narrate that which cannot be narrated. You were in utter samadhi. Now wake up and narrate the samadhi. So double whammy. First of all, you wake up. And then you do the impossible. The Guru is wondering, what crime have I done? Why am I being asked to do all this? Was I not already all right? I was gone, totally gone. And I have been summoned back. And now I am being told to describe the place I had gone to. Now, first of all, you have called me back, which is bad enough. And on top of that, you are asking me to describe where I have been to. Coming back is bad enough. And being asked to describe what you have seen is worse. That's the predicament of the Guru. you would understand why he would face a certain irritation. It's just that his compassion overrides his irritation. But one should never underestimate Maya. Sometimes it may happen that irritation can get the better of compassion. And then one would not know who is the guru and who is the student. Both are then hateful of each other. So it is wise and prudent that the guru too must keep praying, "O Lord, let me not hate the student." Hmm? Here are mothers. Suppose the mother is a PhD. Hmm? And she is doing some utterly important research work. And she is a PhD in the languages. Her doctorate is in the languages. She is an utter master of the languages. And then there is the kid. And the kid does not know the difference between you and we. And the mother is being asked to teach the kid. Not only teach the kid while keeping aside her research work. Just see what she was doing. Just see what she was doing. What was she doing? Research work. And now she has been told to handhold the child and help him draw a C. And the fellow is drawing a C like this continuously. Mothers know that. Kids are very fond of drawing mirror images of the letters. So the D is always like this. Our mothers don't know what to do with this. Now you know why the mother must pray to God, "Let me not hate the kid." Hmm? Not yet. Clear? Jitendra?